Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So, May is gone, June is here, the weather still looks pretty awful, not quite sure why, looking at grey clouds right now. June is meant to be the start of summer. Isn't there a day in June that is the start of summer? I don't know, we're not getting it. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to round up every book I read in May. I'm going to let you know what I read. Here they are, you can probably see a little bit of it already. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you which was my favourite, whether any of them were any good, which ones were the best, which were the worst, etc. As I do every month anyway. But what I want you to do whilst you go through is if you've read any of them, let me know in the comments down below. If you agree with any of my comments, let me know. If you don't agree, obviously let me know, but in a nicer way. But either way, you should definitely be liking and subscribing by now. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so the first book I read this month, or in May, so last month, was Us by David Nicholls. Now, I've read a David Nicholls before. I've read One Day by David Nicholls. I watched the Netflix series of that. Both utterly fantastic. So when I saw this sitting on my mum and dad's bookshelf, I thought I need to read another David Nicholls. Was that a one book wonder, or does he actually write brilliantly and I need to be reading more of his books? In short, Us is fantastic. It really, really was good. Not as good as One Day. I think One Day is probably going to be one of my favourite books I've ever read. Us isn't quite there yet. Us follows the story of a man called Douglas, who is basically just a husband and a father. One day his wife says to him, "I think I want to leave you." And he's like, "What the hell?" So then they've already got a pre-planned trip around Europe, which he says, "Let's go on that, see how you feel after, see if everything gets sorted out, and we'll see what happens." And the trip covers different areas in Europe. He's got a fairly iffy relationship with his son anyway. They had some past, which I don't want to ruin in case you want to read the book, which meant that their son is kind of a bit special to them. What then ensues is essentially loads of kind of smaller moments within different areas around Europe. He's essentially trying to rekindle his relationship with his wife. He didn't think there was anything wrong. Then all of a sudden there is something wrong. Really, really interesting book. And one of my favorite things about David Nicholls is all of his books are really down to earth. Yes, sometimes he's going to these exotic places in Europe, but they're often places that a lot of us have been as well. If you are English, the one thing you generally do when you go abroad is go somewhere in Europe. Yes, sometimes we go to America and more exotic places, but I would say the majority of people have been somewhere in Italy or Spain, for example, and that's exactly what he does here. Goes to places you've probably been to or know somebody who's been to. Therefore, that makes it feel down to earth. Then what's happening is they're just having down to earth conversations. Nothing immensely crazy happens. This isn't some racing plot, racing story where you're going to be buffeted every time something happens. But generally, really, really interesting story, really, really interesting book. The characters are really down to earth and real. But as I said, not as good as One Day. Didn't make me want to bawl my eyes out. Didn't make me want to, I don't know, take some time off from reading to console myself about how fantastic it was. Definitely give it a read if you've read One Day or you've read any of the David Nicholls, because it's got the same sort of kind of humour, as I said, darkness, emotion. And there is a moment in it where I was like, wow, okay, we just skipped through some really important plot points there. But I think that was the point of what he was trying to get across there. So yeah, this was really, really good. Us by David Nicholls. The next book I read was Iron Widow by Jiran J. Zhao. I might have butchered that. I do apologise. I've tried my hardest. I've said it a lot now in a few TikToks, so I've tried, but there we go. Iron Widow was a breath of fresh air. I'd been reading a load of kind of thrillers, down to earth, David Nicholls, real human beings with real problems, kind of real situations, to Iron Widow about giant mechabots powered by chi, which is essentially humans' willpower, which you can suck from other women, which is a big part of the story, to power up and level up these mechabots to fight aliens who are attacking this fictional sci-fi, Asian-inspired place. Amazing. It was so satisfying to read this. And also, there doesn't appear to be kind of any traditional tropes in this. Now, I was a little bit worried. Often when you have a female lead in a fantasy book, they try and throw in a bit of romance. So I thought this was going to be some sort of cheap romantasy. What then often can happen is the romance isn't that great because realistically that wasn't their focus, and the fantasy's not that great because they're trying to focus on trying to balance out the romance as well. That doesn't happen in here. There is a little bit of romance, but only in the sense of she's a human being who likes another human being and they're in the same book. Not in that's the focus of the book and the rest of the kind of book is kind of put aside, like your ACOTAR, like your Fourth Wing, though I think Fourth Wing does do it a bit better. Iron Widow just race through the plot. I thought this was like a 600-700 page book that was going to be an epic. It's not even 400 pages long. It may look quite thick, but it's not even 400 pages long. And at no point does Chiran ever really stop to kind of consider anything. She's like, here's a load of plot, here's a load of action, here's some people talking, here's some fighting, the book's finished. And you're like, holy shit, that was amazing. And it really, really is impressive. This was very kindly sent to me by somebody over on TikTok who literally was like, I just wanted to send you a book and this one had the coolest front cover. So lovely and such a nice surprise to receive stuff like that, and also such a nice surprise for it to be a genuinely fantastic book. It was from my wish list, but I'd forgotten I'd wishlisted it because I wishlisted it like 2 years ago. Iron Widow, a pleasant surprise throughout May. So that's by Chiran J. Tsao. If you've not picked up and you want something that's just like a bit of fantasy, sci-fi, nice and short, punchy, with some great characters, loads of action, and this really cool world that by the end of it, there's a bit at the end as well where you're like, oh, okay, things aren't as they seemed. This is the book you should be reading. The next book I read in May was The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne. This may just be the best book I have and will read all year. Grammatically, that did not make sense, but you get what I mean. The Heart's Invisible Furies tells a story of Cyril, who starts off literally in the womb at the start of the book from a first person point of view. It's amazing, very impressive. And then it talks through his life, his decades, his struggles, his problems, this sort of thing. Cyril is gay in 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s Ireland. Can't help not saying that in an Irish accent. And essentially, the book covers his struggles. It covers people's prejudices, it covers the dark times, the losses, but it also covers the highs and the kind people he meets and how over the decades things get a bit easier. People start to understand more. People care less about who you are and what you do and how you've been born. Cyril himself is incredibly kind. He just has this really innate kind nature to him. He grows up in love with a man called Julian. Julian, from very, very young, is somebody that he essentially makes him realise is gay. What? Julian essentially makes him realise he's gay, yes. And then he grows up and he thinks he's in love with this person, but it's just kind of like a young fling. Now, I don't want to ruin too much of the story, but Julian is a massive influence throughout his life, throughout how he grows up as a human being, throughout some of his struggles that he faces, and the people that he meets along the way. Now, the story is brilliant. It really, really was impressive. Not only does a lot happen to Cyril, he seems to live such an extraordinary life. I mean, I think he covers 80, 90 years, so you are going to live and do some pretty cool things throughout that life, especially if you're forced by society to be single and therefore kind of travel a bit more and therefore not settle down quite as much and meet more people, that sort of things, which happens in this book. The other thing is John Boyne's writing is phenomenal. Utterly phenomenal. This book is probably the closest I would ever give a book to 5 stars on my website. I don't give 5 out of 5 reviews. If you don't know, I give from about 3.25 to a 4.75, with 4.75 being the best. I gave this a 4.75 on my blog, but realistically, if I was going to give a book a 5-star, I'd give it this. Brilliant. Really, really one of the best books I've ever read. John Boyne is a fantastic writer. I think the topic is incredible. I think it really shows the hardship if you didn't know what it's like probably growing up as a gay man. I personally don't know what it's like, but to be able to read it from this kind of angle is really, really interesting. And it's heartbreaking. There are moments you're like, oh God, that's horrible and sad. But then there are other moments where you just feel warm and you find yourself smiling, and it's just brilliant. It really, really is brilliant. It's not short. There is over 700 pages in this copy I have. I don't know if there's fewer pages in some other copies or maybe more pages in other copies, I don't know, but this copy has over 700 pages. This is secondhand. I got it from a website where I got it for a lot cheaper than if I bought it brand new. I'm hoping that's okay. I think I'm going to end up buying this in brand new condition, maybe getting a hardback or something like that, because it genuinely has gone into my list of one of the best books I've ever read. The fourth and final book I managed to get finished in May was The Locked Door by Freida McFadden. Now, just a quick caveat, I've not read that many books in May because I've been reading The Lonesome Dove, which is incredibly long. Heart's Invisible Furies was quite long. And I had some time on holiday where I wasn't reading and some other time where I was just kind of not reading as well. But The Locked Door by Freida McFadden, everybody. This is the third Freida McFadden book I've read. I've read The Housemaid and The Housemaid's Secret, and then we've got The Locked Door. I do have 4 other Freida McFadden books in my kind of TBR list. If you go into the works, you're always going to pick up a new Freida McFadden book. This, in my opinion, wasn't as good as The Housemaid. The Housemaid, the twist, and you can see why The Housemaid went on to become her absolute massive hit that blew her into kind of everybody's eye line. The Locked Door didn't quite reach that. Now, there is a twist. There is a great female lead. There are some interesting characters. It is quick. It is fast-paced. It's very easy to read. It's got all of the tick boxes you'd want from a Freida McFadden. It just didn't quite have that twist that made me go, holy crap, that was impressive. But it's still enjoyable, and it is a thriller. It's a story essentially about a woman called Nora Davies, or Davis. Her dad, when she's very young, or I don't know how young, but when she's young, is arrested for essentially keeping women, cutting their arms off and killing them in his basement. Then one day, like 20, 30 years later, a policeman comes to her office. She's a successful surgeon now. Policeman comes to her office and says, somebody has been killed in the exact same way. You are number one suspect, essentially. Then what happens is she's like, well, it's not me. Who the hell is it? So we've then got to find out who the hell it is. Now, as I said, I don't think the twist in this is as good as the twist in her other books, The Housemaid and The Housemaid's Secret. I've heard some other twists are great. The problem is when you're looking for a twist and then it comes, it never really makes you pleasantly surprised because you've tried to work all of them out. So either you've worked it out or you think, no, that's not conceivable because I hadn't worked it out. And that's unfortunately what happened here. I think the massively positive thing that happened with The Housemaid is the twist happens in the middle. So you've not got enough time to work anything out. You're just reading the book and you're like, holy, everything's changed. This happens at the end. It's a character that she might have been thinking about as the character to kind of do it from the start. I don't know, just felt a little bit cheap and easy. So not Freida McFadden's best of the three I've read of hers so far, but still as solid. And if you're a thriller fan, you cannot go wrong with Freida McFadden. They're easy, there's twists, they're fast-paced, and they've got those kind of short chapters that make you really enjoy them. So that was the fourth book I read throughout May, The Locked Door by Freida McFadden. So they're the 4 books I read throughout May. We've got The Locked Door by Freida McFadden, The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne, Iron Widow by Chiran J. Zhao, and Us by David Nichols. Now, I would have to say that The Heart's Invisible Furies is one of the best books I've ever read, therefore it's the best book from the month. I would then probably say Iron Widow, then Us, then Locked Door. That's just the order I'd put them in. I'm not sure if that's even the order I viewed them in on my blog, but they were utterly brilliant. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly segue through to what I'm currently reading and what you can expect to see on my kind of list in June as well, because I'm reading a few books at the moment and I've finished a few books recently that you should expect to see there. Okay, so these are the 3 books that I'm reading at the moment. Yes, I'm reading 3 books at one time. Is that ever a good idea? Probably not, but I'm doing it because I get bored of things and I want different genres and then I want to pick something else up. Sometimes I want something quick and easy to read whilst I've got something longer to read on the go. But anyway, let me talk you through all 3 of them. Starting off with The Lonesome Dove. Now, this was really kindly sent to me by a follower over on Instagram. They said, I really wanted you to read this. I want to hear your opinions on it. Do you mind if I send you a copy? And I said, absolutely not. You can send me whatever you like. Well, books, nothing weird. But The Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry is an absolute epic. We're talking about 850 pages. What I'm doing at the moment with it is I'm reading it on and off. I have the audiobook. The audiobook, unfortunately, is really poor kind of quality, despite the fact I got from Audible. It sounds really old, really tinny, and it's got a really strong kind of, well, Texan accent to it. So that makes it a little bit difficult to listen to, therefore I have to listen to it a bit slower. I try and pick it up and read it physically every now and then. What I'm actually working on at the moment is I'm recording myself reading it every now and then. And I'm going to do a YouTube video over here talking about my experiences of reading it. So that's currently a book I'm reading. I'm hoping to get that finished in June because if I don't, it will have taken far too long. So that's The Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. Then the next book is Strange Sally Diamond by Liz Nugent. Now, I recently went on holiday. I got back a few days ago. Just before holiday, I finished The Locked Door by Freida McFadden, so I needed something light and easy to take with me. So I picked up Strange Sally Diamond because the Audible had become available on Libby and it was quite small. But this is about a woman who essentially, I don't want to give too much of it away, but Sally Diamond is a little bit strange. That's why it's called Strange. And I don't mean strange in a nasty way. I mean in that she had something very dark happen to her when she was very young and therefore struggles with a lot of social cues and understandings. One day her father dies. She then sticks him out in the incinerator and burns him because he joked one day, just throw me out with the bins when I die. That's really interesting and I love the premise of it. Sally herself is a really interesting character. As a result of the issues that she struggled with when she was younger, it's created a character who's very naive, who's very innocent, who wants to learn but has learned some very specific rules about how to not interact with people and how to interact with people. I'm over halfway. I think I'm a bit further than this because I've got the audiobook, so I'm a bit further than this at the moment. I imagine I'm going to finish this in the next day or two. Really, really interesting. Really, really liking it. It kind of covers a thriller. There's not like a point to it. It just seems to be a story about Sally and her past and what it turns out to be her, I believe, her brother. Anyway, we don't 100% yet know that. There could still be a twist there. Really, really interesting book. Stunning front cover as well. Really, really love this cool front cover. So far, it's been really enjoyable, but not mind-blowing. So we'll see how Strange Sally Diamond by Liz Nugent goes. But hoping to have that finished soon. Should definitely have a review of that up over on my blog and on my TikTok and everywhere over the next few days. Then finally, whilst I was away, I went to Bletchley Park, which if you didn't know is where Alan Turing solved the Enigma code with the bomb machine. And then essentially saved us during World War II. He decoded these codes that the Germans were sending and saved us. Therefore, I was in the gift shop just before. I think you do like an initial tour and then I diverse off into the gift shops if there's only bookmarks before we carry on going around. I like picking up bookmarks from places we go. I saw the rose code and then my partner's mum said to me, yeah, I've read it and that was brilliant. So picked it up, now reading it, not too far in. As you can see by my bookmark, I've read, what's that, 70 pages or so. But really, really enjoying it. The main character so far, or there's a few characters, but Osla is really, really interesting. Really enjoying her story and interested to see what else goes on here. But I'm one of those people that I go and do something, find it quite interesting, like a historical thing or a game thing, and then I have to read about it. And then I really, really want to read a story about it. And that's what I'm doing here with the Rose Code. Really like the front cover. Usually I'm not a person on front covers type of person, but there's something about this one that's quite nice actually. It's about 1940s Bletchley Park and 1947 London, so pre-war and post-war, or during the war and post-war, and it's about these women that work at Bletchley Park helping with the decoding via different means and the supports that they can offer. So they were called, I think they were called the Wrens back in the day. They were essentially women helpers at the time to support the important men decoding. So that's what the Rose Code is about. Really looking forward to it. It is a thick boy, over 600 pages here. Oh, there's a piece of text in the end. Looking forward to finishing that one. So that's the third book I'm reading at the moment. So they're the 3 books I'm reading at the moment, and I'm hoping to have them finished before the end of June. So look out for those in my next video. But let me know, which of these have you read? Which did you enjoy? Which did you not enjoy? Which are you now going to pick up because I've said you should pick them up, and which are you going to avoid because I said they were okay? Let me know down in the comments below. If you haven't yet, I would really, really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed to the video. Until the next video though.